The 2020 race is shifting into high gear. President Trump is getting ready to officially kick off his re-election campaign this week. And we're a little over a week from the first Democratic debate. We have some busy months ahead of us as we get closer to the finish line, and we want you to be able to follow along with us as we go. So for that, we are joined by CBS News' Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto. He is in Washington, D.C. Anthony, thanks for being with us. First of all, if you could walk us through this process of creating these tracker polls. How does this work?
Well, Elaine, it's going to be a big election, so we thought we had to go big with the polling. We're talking to more voters than we ever have before, many more thousands than you might see in other polls. But most importantly, we're doing it in all the states we think are going to matter right up front. That means going beyond just Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina. They're, of course, important, but then all 18 states that are going to be holding their contests this year up to and including Super Tuesday. There's a lot of delegates at stake there. And there's also the ability for candidates to go to every one of those, every corner of those states to pick up those delegates and fight for votes. And that's the way I think we want to tell the story. And that's really what this tracker is aimed to do.
Well, Anthony, what's different about 2020 and how does that affect the way these polls are created?
Well, part of it is this very big field, this historically large field that the Democrats have. So how are voters going to navigate this? One of the things we do is ask them not just who they'd vote for today. It's a little early for that, frankly. But we also ask them who they're considering voting for, who's in the mix in their minds. And that's really telling. On average, they're picking about 4 candidates to consider. That's just a fraction of the whole field. And you see them considering, of course, Joe Biden, but also Harris, Sanders, Warren, and to a lesser extent, Buttigieg. That, to me, starts to define what's really the upper tier in voters' minds. And I think those are the candidates to keep an eye on as we head into the debates. And then also, can any other candidates move first into that consideration set before they might move into a vote choice, Elaine?
And Anthony, would you say there is a divide on what voters want from a candidate?
Yeah, so we asked voters whether they thought the party's message ought to be that the party, were to win, would return things to the way they were before President Trump took office, or would they try to advance a more progressive agenda than the party ever has before. And there's a real split among Democrats on what they ought to do, but tellingly, there's a split on who those voters would pick. So Joe Biden does very well with the voters who say they'd like the message to bring things back to the way they were before President Trump. But he does less well. He's really in the mix, neck and neck, with Warren and with Sanders among that more progressive element of the party. And I think that's a divide in what voters want that I think we watch going forward, Elaine.
And Anthony, what are Democrats saying about the importance of electability and who's seen as the most electable candidate so far?
They really can't emphasize the importance of it enough. It's the thing that almost all of them say. They've got to be convinced a candidate could beat Donald Trump before they'll vote for them. Now, right now, that's one of the things propelling Joe Biden. Not only do people think that he could beat Donald Trump, but many think he probably would. And that's very different from a lot of the other assessments of the candidates in the field. Even for supporters of folks like Warren and Sanders and others are saying they maybe could beat Donald Trump, but they're not convinced of it yet. And I think that's another test we watch as we go forward, whether those other candidates can convince voters of their chances against the president the Democrats obviously very badly want to defeat.
And Anthony, you mentioned this a moment ago. We are looking at a crowded Democratic field with 24 presidential candidates. You mentioned that most people are looking at about 4 people so far, but how is that number, 24, actually influencing the way people are navigating this Democratic field?
I think one of the things to watch, Elaine, is the fact that the rules this year have changed. People just tuning into the process may not be aware yet that the Democrats after 2016, when a lot of Democrats told us they felt like party leaders and officials had too much influence in the race, well, the Democrats have changed the rules, and those party leaders and officials don't have the kind of influence that they used to. This year, it's really all about elected delegates, the ones that are won when candidates do well in the primaries. So I think that's one thing that keeps a lot of candidates in this race. They figure they might have a shot to get hot, pick up some of those delegates. And I think that calendar that I mentioned, where you've got a lot of diverse states going early, giving out delegates proportionally. You don't have to win. You just have to maybe place second or third. That also, if candidates are gaming this out, might make them look and go, hey, maybe I have a shot. And I think that's one of the reasons you see such a large field, at least for now, Elaine.
All right, Anthony Salvanto in Washington for us. Anthony, thank you.
Thank you.